The unconscious agreement began not with a shouted declaration, but a whispered compromise. It wasn't a conscious decision to shed your skin, but an imperceptible shift, driven by the primal need to belong. You learned early that your true face, unfiltered and raw, was too much, too wild, too inconvenient, so you began to perform, not for an audience, but for the very architects of yourself, this survival architecture. This wasn't about defiance. It was about a deep, ancestral fear of abandonment. The mirror reflecting your face showed not your soul, but a social contract you were terrified of breaking. Each smile you forced, each opinion you suppressed, was a brick laid in a fortress designed to keep you safe. But this fortress, built brick by brick from denuded desires, became your prison. What we see in the mirror each morning is often not a self-portrait, but a composite sketch of expectations. The original blueprint, the raw, unformed essence of you, is buried beneath layers of learned behavior. This bargain, struck in the quiet chambers of your childhood, wasn't for power or wealth, but for a fragile illusion of security. You weren't learning to live, you were learning to become palatable. This adaptation, so deeply ingrained, masquerades as maturity. Yet, what is lost when the performance becomes effortless, when the mask is indistinguishable from the face? This fundamental deception, born from a need to be loved, has created a profound inner void. We feel this absence, a hollow ache, because a vital part of us was sacrificed at the altar of belonging. This pact, made in the silent language of survival, begs a question. What happens when the reflection offers no solace, only a stranger's gaze that demands more of the performance? In the next section, we will delve into the subtle architecture of this safety, the careful construction of the veil that hides our vulnerability. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos just like this. Now let's keep going. The veil of safety is not woven from threads of comfort, but from the tightly bound strands of avoidance. It's the gentle redirection from uncomfortable truths, the swift turn away from the precipice of genuine feeling. This is the architecture of a life built not to feel, but to bypass. Think of the child who learns to anticipate the moods of their caregiver, not out of empathy, but out of a desperate need to stave off the storm. That precocious understanding is a thread carefully placed to create a buffer. This buffer, meant to protect, becomes a barrier. We craft these veils unconsciously. They are built from the unspoken rules of our families, the cultural mandates of stoicism, the societal pressure to always appear composed. Each time we bite back a truth, each time we swallow an emotion, another layer is added. This isn't a sudden collapse, but a gradual erosion of authenticity. The mask of composure becomes so seamless, so ingrained, that the wearer forgets the face beneath. The veil isn't just about hiding pain, it's about preventing its very emergence. It's the subtle censorship of the soul. Nietzsche hinted at this when he spoke of the abyss, and how one must be careful lest they stare too long. Here the abyss is not external, but the unexamined landscape of our own inner world. We fear what we might find. We fear the raw, untamed self that lurks beneath the polished surface of our constructed safety. The fear of what lies beyond the veil is a powerful anchor, keeping us tethered to the familiar discomfort of our illusions. But what happens when the fabric of this safe illusion begins to fray, exposing the raw edges of our self-denial? The next section will explore how this perceived survival architecture creates a profound dissociation from our truest selves. Persona, in its true sense, is not merely a mask. It is intricate survival architecture, a meticulously constructed edifice designed to navigate a world that often feels hostile to the authentic self. It is the role we learn to play, not from a script, but from the silent directives of our environment. Consider the stoic father figure, the ever-cheerful mother, the dutiful child. These are not just archetypes, they are blueprints for survival, etched into our psyches through relentless repetition. We absorb these roles, internalizing them as our own, so deeply that the boundary between performance and being becomes blurred, then obliterated. This architecture is built on the foundation of perceived threats. If vulnerability leads to rejection, then invulnerability becomes the highest virtue. If expressing needs results in scarcity, then self-sufficiency becomes the ultimate goal. Each perceived danger is met with a new structural element, a reinforced wall, a hidden escape route. Jung understood this when he spoke of the persona as the mediator between the ego and the world. But what happens when this mediator becomes the sole inhabitant of the inner castle, locking away the rightful king, the authentic self? We begin to mistake the blueprint for the building, the role for the person. The pain arises not from the existence of the persona, but from its unchecked dominance. It's the silent suffering of the soul trapped within its own expertly crafted walls. This prison built for protection ultimately insulates us from the very life we crave. The systems we inhabit, time, gravity, even the names we are given, become reflections of this inner architecture, dictating our movements, our perceived limitations. They are not external forces as much as they are solidified manifestations of our internal imprisonment. This survival architecture, so skillfully erected, leaves us feeling disconnected. We are living within the carefully constructed confines of our roles, but what lies beyond these walls, beyond the persona designed to shield us? The next section will explore the critical threshold of dissociation, the point where the performance takes over completely. Dissociation is not a sudden break, but a slow, almost imperceptible drifting away. It's the soul quietly stepping aside, leaving the body to enact a script it no longer fully owns. This is the architecture of survival pushed to its extreme, where the self splinters to endure what it cannot integrate. Imagine a child witnessing profound trauma. To survive, their consciousness fragments. A part of them observes, detached, while another part performs the necessary actions. This is not weakness, it is the mind's desperate attempt to preserve itself from utter annihilation. In our daily lives, this manifests as a subtle numbness, a psychic distance from our own experiences. We go through the motions, our bodies moving on autopilot, while our minds are miles away, lost in a fog of unacknowledged emotion. The present moment becomes a dim echo, a muted experience. Nietzsche wrestled with this profound alienation, this feeling of being a stranger in one's own skin. The constant need to maintain a facade, to uphold a persona, requires a psychic divorce from the raw, messy reality of being alive. We dissociate from our pain, our joy, even our own bodies. This threshold is crossed when the performance becomes so seamless, so habitual, that the awareness of a separate, observing self begins to fade. The veil of safety becomes so thick that no light of true feeling can penetrate it. We become ghosts in our own lives, haunting the edges of our own experiences. The world outside, with its demands and expectations, reinforces this state. It rewards composure, obedience, and the absence of disruptive emotion. The system encourages us to remain disassociated, to be more efficient, more predictable. Less human, we stand at a precipice where the self has retreated so far, it risks becoming a permanent absence. But what echoes remain in that vast, internal space created by dissociation? The next section will explore the profound emptiness of the orphaned self, left behind beyond the gate of our conscious awareness. Beyond the gate, a profound emptiness resides. It's the space where the true self, the orphaned self, waits in silent exile. This is not a place of physical location, but a psychic landscape populated by the echoes of what was denied, what was suppressed, what was deemed unacceptable. When we dissociate, when we build elaborate veils of safety, we are effectively locking away a vital part of our being. This exiled self is the unloved child, the untamed artist, the rebel spirit. It is the raw, unfiltered essence that proved too inconvenient, too disruptive, to be allowed into the light of conscious life. Consider the quiet despair of the abandoned child, waiting for a parent who never returns. This is the emotional resonance of the orphaned self. It yearns for recognition, for integration, but finds only the locked gate of our defenses. Its silence is not peace, but a profound cosmic loneliness. Jung's shadow archetype offers a glimpse into this lost territory. The shadow holds all that we have deemed unworthy of ourselves, all that we have projected outward or buried within. The orphaned self is the core of that shadow, the raw material of our deepest fears and unexpressed desires. This exile, born of survival, becomes a source of chronic pain. It is the gnawing feeling of incompleteness, the sense that something vital is missing, even when life appears outwardly successful. The systems of the world, with their emphasis on order and control, often inadvertently reinforce this exile, rewarding conformity over authentic expression. We may try to fill this void with external achievements, with fleeting pleasures, with the approval of others. But these are merely temporary distractions from the fundamental task of welcoming the lost child home. The gate remains stubbornly shut, guarded by the architecture of our carefully constructed selves. This profound solitude, this internal abandonment, leaves us perpetually seeking something we cannot name. But what happens when the gate begins to creak open, when the orphaned self offers a glimpse of its forgotten truth? The next section will confront the nature of the mirror, which no longer simply reflects, but actively demands more from our fractured selves. The mirror, once a passive observer, has become an active accuser. It no longer offers a neutral reflection of who we are, but a demanding gaze that highlights our perceived inadequacies. This is the mirror that does not simply show, but judges, pushing us further into the performance of who we are expected to be. This shift occurs when our carefully constructed persona begins to falter. The mask that once felt so secure now feels brittle. The demands placed upon us by external systems, by the world's relentless expectations, begin to crack its surface. The mirror catches these fissures, magnifying them. It becomes a symbol of our internal conflict. We see a reflection that is both familiar and alien. We recognize the face, but not the soul residing behind the eyes. Each perceived flaw, each missed expectation, is amplified, feeding the inner critic that has taken up residence within. This is the internal battleground where the exiled self, the orphaned self, begins to whisper its dissent. The demands of the mirror are the externalization of our own inner judgment. We expect perfection because we have denied our flaws. We demand performance because we have suppressed our authentic selves. Kierkegaard spoke of despair as the sickness unto death, the state of not wishing to be oneself. The demanding mirror embodies this despair. It forces us to confront the gap between our perceived selves and the idealized versions we are pressured to embody. The reflection becomes a relentless interrogation. The symbolic repetition of mirrors throughout our experience, in art, in literature, in dreams, suggests a deep psychic resonance. They are not merely tools for grooming, but portals to self-awareness, or in this case, self-recrimination. The mirror demands a return to the performance, a further tightening of the defenses. We become trapped in a cycle of self-judgment, each glance in the mirror reinforcing the belief that we are not enough. This relentless demand leaves us feeling hollowed out, exhausted by the effort of perpetual self-correction. But what is the source of this insatiable demand, this constant pressure to adapt? The next section will introduce the false prophet, the embodiment of societal pressure to conform. The false prophet is not a figure of overt deception, but of insidious adaptation. It whispers the sweet, palatable lies that promise belonging through conformity. It is the voice of the world, urging us to bend, to shape ourselves into forms that are pleasing, that are safe, that are utterly devoid of genuine spirit. This prophet doesn't preach dogma, it peddles practicality. It champions the virtues of fitting in, of smoothing out rough edges, of sacrificing personal truth for collective comfort. It is the voice that tells you, this is how it's done, and implies that any deviation is folly. We encounter this prophet in the casual advice, the well-meaning suggestions, the societal norms that go unquestioned. Be more like X, or don't make waves. or just go with the flow. These pronouncements, seemingly harmless, are the siren songs that lure us away from our own inner compass. The false prophet thrives on our fear of the outsider, our deep-seated need for social validation. It offers a tempting shortcut to acceptance. Simply shed your unique skin, and you shall be welcomed into the fold. But the price of this entry is the slow, suffocating death of the self. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious holds a deep reservoir of these archetypal figures, and the false prophet is a potent manifestation of societal pressure. It represents the primal urge to belong, twisted into a mechanism of self-betrayal. It convinces us that adaptation is equivalent to wisdom. The spiritual pain caused by this false prophet stems from the erosion of our inner authority. When we constantly defer to external voices, we lose the capacity to hear our own soul. We become disconnected from our inner knowing, adrift in a sea of borrowed opinions and unexamined assumptions. This constant pressure to adapt, to become palatable, leaves us feeling hollow and inauthentic. We are performing a life, not living it. But what if the very thing we are told to adapt to is a grand illusion, a carefully crafted narrative that obscures a forgotten truth? The next section will explore the power and the peril of the name we are told to forget. The name you were told to forget is not the one etched on your birth certificate. It is the name of your true self, the whisper of your soul before it was branded by expectation and obligation. This forgotten name represents the essence of your being, a sacred resonance that the world, in its infinite wisdom of conformity, seeks to silence. Imagine a bell, its tone pure and clear, vibrating with an ancient song. Now imagine that bell being muffled, its resonance suppressed, its very existence denied. This is the fate of the forgotten name. It is the inherent truth of who you are, buried beneath layers of social conditioning and survival mechanisms. This forgetting is not an act of malice, but often an act of misguided protection. Parents, teachers, society itself teach us how to navigate the world by teaching us what parts of ourselves to hide. The wildness, the passion, the fierce individuality, these are often the first to be deemed inconvenient and then systematically erased. The pain associated with this forgotten name is a deep, persistent ache of recognition. It's the feeling of homesickness for a place you've never consciously known, a longing for a state of being that feels both primal and profoundly lost. It's the spiritual suffering of being a stranger to oneself. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the overman, is a difficult but vital struggle against this erasure. It speaks to the arduous journey of shedding the imposed identities, of reclaiming the lost name, and forging a self that is authentic, untamed, and self-created. The external systems of our lives, laws, social hierarchies, even the way we categorize ourselves, all serve to reinforce this forgetting. They provide frameworks for identity that are external and prescribed, leaving little room for the organic unfolding of self. The forgotten name holds the key to breaking free from these imposed structures. We carry this lost name within us, a silent promise of who we were meant to be. It is a source of latent power, a potent symbol of our true potential. But what does it mean to seek this forgotten truth in a world that worships external validation? The next section will take us into the heart of the approval temple, where this validation is sought. The approval temple is not built of stone and mortar, but of the collective gaze and the whispered accolades that signify acceptance. It is the sacred space where we offer our sacrifices, our authentic selves, our unmet needs, our deepest desires, at the altar of external validation. Here the forgotten name is perpetually suppressed. Every act of seeking approval is an act of devotion within this temple. The job title, the social media likes, the compliments received, these are the offerings laid upon its altars. We believe that by accumulating these tokens, we will find a sense of worth, a sense of belonging, a sense of being seen. But the paradox of the approval temple is that its blessings are fleeting and ultimately hollow. The validation sought is a mirrored illusion, reflecting back what we believe others want to see, not what truly resonates within. The more we seek it, the more it eludes us, leaving us perpetually in a state of wanting, of needing more. Jung's anima and animus archetypes can be seen here, as we seek external reflection for qualities we have suppressed within ourselves. We look to others to affirm our strength, our beauty, our worth, because we have failed to cultivate these within our own inner landscape. The temple offers a temporary balm, not a lasting cure. The pain of the approval temple is the spiritual hunger that gnaws at the soul, a hunger that no amount of external affirmation can truly satisfy. It's the quiet desperation of knowing that the applause can stop at any moment, leaving us exposed and empty. The forgotten name lies dormant, its song unheard within these hallowed halls. The structure of this temple is reinforced by the systems we inhabit. Meritocracy, consumerism, and the relentless pursuit of status all contribute to its edifice, guiding us towards a common mode of worship. We are encouraged to seek external markers of success, to parade our achievements, to earn our place. We are engaged in a constant, exhausting ritual within these walls, seeking a God that is both absent and perpetually demanding more. But what is the true cost of this worship, this ceaseless offering of our genuine selves? The next section will reveal the hollowness of this inheritance, the emptiness that lies at the core of this desperate quest. Hollow as inheritance speaks to the profound emptiness passed down through generations, not through material wealth, but through the unconscious transmission of unacknowledged pain and self-denial. It is the spiritual vacuum that becomes our birthright, a legacy of silence and suppression. This inheritance is not a conscious choice, but an unconscious imprint. We absorb the anxieties, the repressions, and the unfulfilled dreams of our ancestors. The systems they navigated, the compromises they made, become the blueprints for our own unlived lives. The forgotten name is a recurring motif in this lineage of hollowness. Think of the unspoken rules within families, the topics that are taboo, the emotions that are deemed too disruptive to acknowledge. These silences, these unaddressed wounds, are passed from parent to child, creating a hollow space where authentic connection and self-expression should reside. This hollowness is a form of spiritual poverty. It leaves us feeling disconnected, lacking a deep sense of inner substance. We may achieve outward success, accumulate possessions, and gain recognition, but a persistent feeling of emptiness remains, a direct consequence of inheriting a legacy of psychic deficit. Blake's vision of innocence corrupted speaks to this inheritance. The pure potential of the child is gradually eroded by the weight of inherited anxieties and societal pressures, leaving them hollowed out, a pale imitation of their true selves. The tomb of unexpressed potential is passed down. The systems that perpetuate this hollowness are often subtle. Cultural narratives that emphasize stoicism over emotional expression, educational systems that prioritize rote learning over critical self-inquiry, and economic structures that reward external achievement above inner well-being all contribute to this inherited void. We find ourselves performing roles that feel alien, seeking validation for achievements that bring no genuine fulfillment. The inheritance of hollowness leaves us feeling like actors in a play we did not write, reciting lines that hold no personal meaning. But what if this inherited hollowness is a deliberate design, a subtle sabotage? The next section will explore the paradox of the saboteur's mirror. The saboteur's mirror reflects not a true image, but a distorted one designed to undermine and confuse. It is the internal critic, amplified, reflecting back a self that is perpetually inadequate, flawed, and destined for failure. This mirror is the architect of self-sabotage, disguised as self-awareness. This is the mirror that catches every misstep, every hesitation, every perceived failure, and magnifies it into a cosmic catastrophe. It whispers falsehoods about our capabilities, convincing us that we are not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy enough to pursue our true desires. The forgotten name is erased by its accusatory gaze. The systems that reinforce this sabotaging mirror are often those we rely on for guidance. education that focuses on identifying errors rather than building strengths, feedback that is purely critical, and societal narratives that celebrate a singular idea of success, all contribute to its construction. This internal saboteur thrives on our fears, feeding them with distorted reflections. It ensures that we stay within the confines of what is safe and predictable, because true self-expression, true growth, represents a threat to its insidious control. The gate to our true potential remains locked by its illusions. Nietzsche's concept of eternal recurrence, when twisted through the lens of the saboteur's mirror, becomes a terrifying prospect. If we live this life of self-doubt and failure over and over, it offers no redemption, only endless cycles of self-recrimination. The tomb of unfulfilled potential becomes permanent. The pain caused by this mirror is a constant, low hum of anxiety, a pervasive sense of dread. It manifests as procrastination, the inability to commit, the fear of finality. We are trapped in a loop of perpetual becoming yet never arriving, always on the verge of something, always falling short. This mirror serves a twisted purpose, to keep us imprisoned within a known, albeit painful, reality. It prevents us from stepping across the threshold into the unknown territory of our true potential, where genuine self-discovery and fulfillment lie. But what if the very thing we are taught to fear, silence, holds the key to breaking free? The next section will explore silence as the forgotten language. Silence in its deepest sense is not an absence of sound, but a presence of being. It is the forgotten language of the soul, a vast, unarticulated truth that speaks volumes beyond the reach of words. This is the primordial space from which all creation arises and to which we are all unconsciously drawn. We have been conditioned to fear silence, to see it as a void, an emptiness that must be filled. Our lives are a cacophony of distractions, a relentless barrage of noise, all designed to ensure we never have to confront the profound stillness within. The approval temple thrives on this clamor. But within that stillness lies the echo of the forgotten name. It is in silence that our deepest intuitions surface, our most profound understandings crystallize. It is a threshold, not of terror, but of profound revelation. The systems of the world, with their emphasis on constant output and communication, silence this inner voice. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious can be seen as a vast, silent library of human experience. It is in moments of deep quietude, when the noise of the world fades, that we can begin to access its ancient wisdom, its archetypal patterns. This is the tomb of repressed knowing, waiting to be excavated. The pain of avoiding silence is the spiritual disconnect it creates. We become estranged from our own inner world, our intuition dulled, our capacity for deep self-understanding diminished. We are constantly seeking answers externally, never realizing the answers reside within the quiet hum of our own being. The symbols of silence, the tomb, the unlit gate, the unplayed bell, all point to a hidden potency, a latent power waiting to be unlocked. It is in the surrender to this stillness, in the courage to listen to what is unsaid, that we begin to reclaim the forgotten language of our soul. This silence is not the silence of resignation, but the pregnant silence of potential. It is the space where the scattered fragments of the self begin to coalesce, where the orphaned child finds solace, and where the mirror ceases its accusations. But what happens when this silence is embraced not as an end, but as a starting point for return? The next section will explore the return of the prodigal child, not with apology, but with reclamation. The prodigal child returns without apology, not out of arrogance, but out of a profound understanding that the wasted years were not a failure, but a necessary journey. This is the return of the authentic self, reclaiming its stolen power not by asking for forgiveness, but by simply existing fully and unapologetically. The forgotten name is finally spoken aloud. This archetype is not about penance. It is about the sovereignty of the soul. The child who wandered away, who chased fleeting comforts and performed for others, has seen the illusion of the approval temple and the distortion of the saboteur's mirror. They return not seeking validation, but bringing their own inherent worth. The narrative of the prodigal son often focuses on the father's forgiveness, but here the emphasis shifts. The journey itself, the suffering, the disillusionment, these were not detours, but the arduous path leading back to the self. The wasted years were the crucible in which true understanding was forged. This return is marked by a deep inner knowing. The noise of the world fades, the demands of the persona lose their power. The silence, once feared, now becomes a sanctuary. The bell, once silenced, now rings with its untarnished tone. The gate is no longer a barrier, but a threshold crossed with quiet confidence. The pain associated with this return is the shedding of old illusions, the letting go of the personas that no longer serve. It can be a grief, a mourning for the time spent performing rather than being. Yet this grief is fertile, paving the way for the re-emergence of the true self. We have spent so long exiled, so long performing, that the very act of simply being becomes a radical act of reclaiming. The hollow inheritance begins to fill, not with external accolades, but with the substance of lived experience, of hard-won wisdom. But what happens when the very foundation of our practiced reality begins to crumble? The next section will examine the cracking of the mirror when belief is relinquished. The mirror cracks when belief is relinquished, not belief in self, but belief in the illusions that have held us captive. It is the shattering of the edifice of false identity, the dissolution of the personas we have worn for so long. This is not destruction, but necessary liberation. The forgotten name is finally etched into the shattered glass. When the belief in the necessity of performance, in the power of external validation, in the validity of the systems that have bound us, finally dissolves, the mirror can no longer sustain its lie. Its surface, once smooth and unbroken, begins to fracture, revealing the true, unadorned self beneath. This is the moment of existential reckoning. The carefully constructed world, built on a foundation of denial and compromise, begins to crumble. The veil of safety tears, the gate of dissociation swings wide open, and the tomb of unexpressed potential offers a glimpse of its true contents. The orphan self is no longer waiting outside. The cracked mirror reflects not a single, coherent image, but a multiplicity of selves, a kaleidoscope of experiences and emotions that have been suppressed. It is a terrifying but ultimately liberating sight, forcing us to confront the fragmented nature of our being without the crutch of illusion. Blake's vision of the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower speaks to this shift in perception. When belief in the superficial systems is relinquished, the extraordinary is revealed within the ordinary, the sacred within the mundane. The bell tolls not with a singular tone, but a symphony. The pain of this cracking is immense, for it involves the dismantling of our most deeply held defenses. It means facing the void without the comforting constructs we have so carefully built. It means acknowledging that everything we thought we knew about ourselves might be a carefully crafted lie. Yet, in this very breaking, there is the promise of renewal. This relinquishing of belief clears the path for a new form of seeing, a new way of being. But what does it mean to stand amidst the fragments, to embrace the shattered reality? The final section will explore the profound act of reclaiming the sacred betrayal. Reclaiming the sacred betrayal is not about forgiveness, but about acknowledging the profound journey that arose from the breaking of our deepest illusions. It is the process of integrating the exiled parts of ourselves, the parts we were forced to betray for the sake of survival, and recognizing their essential, sacred nature. The forgotten name is now the guiding constellation. The betrayals we have experienced and those we have enacted upon ourselves, the silencing of our truths, the suppression of our desires, the adoption of false identities were not failures, but crucial steps in a larger, archetypal unfolding. The cracked mirror reveals these fragments not as flaws, but as facets of a greater, more complex truth. This is the journey of embracing the shadow, of welcoming the orphan self, of understanding that the false prophet and the saboteur's mirror were not enemies, but guides through a necessary darkness. The hollow inheritance begins to fill, not with borrowed light, but with the incandescent glow of reclaimed authenticity. The systems that once imprisoned us become mere artifacts of our transformation. The veils are lifted, the gates are left behind, and the silence is no longer a feared void, but a sacred space of profound being. The bell tolls not in warning, but in celebration of wholeness. Jung's concept of individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self, is embodied in this reclamation. It is the ultimate act of courage to face the wilderness of our own souls and declare, "This is mine. This is sacred." The pain that remains is not the sharp ache of denial, but the deep, resonant ache of belonging, a belonging not to external systems, but to the wild, untamed landscape of our own truest selves. It is the final ascent, not towards perfection, but towards a profound and sacred integration of all that we have denied, all that we have been forced to betray. Now that concludes this video. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.